The Mughals, the British, the Soviets, the Americans. 4 major global powers have attempted to dominate the Indian subcontinent. All 4 eventually retreated or collapsed. Now, China is running the exact same playbook, making the exact same errors. Take the British Empire. They arrived in the 1600s with a singular goal: systematic economic extraction. In the 19th century, intellectual Dadabhai Naoroji quantified in his Drain of Wealth theory, detailing how Indian resources were siphoned off to explicitly fund British industrialization, leaving the local economy to starve. This chart plots the timeline of British rule against the human cost of that extraction. Over a period of 190 years, the redirection of local agriculture to foreign cash crops led to 24 distinct famines. An estimated 28 million people died of starvation. That level of pressure naturally triggered violent pushback. By 1857, the breaking point arrived. 200,000 Indian soldiers turned their weapons on their British commanders in a massive, coordinated mutiny that forced the British government to completely restructure its colonial military. The friction only intensified. In 1919, British troops fired on an unarmed crowd at Jallianwala Bagh, killing 379 people. That specific massacre became the catalyst for Mahatma Gandhi to launch his non-cooperation movement, a strategy of mass civil disobedience that paralyzed British institutions without firing a single shot. Despite holding absolute military superiority and executing the largest wealth transfer in recorded history, the British Empire could not maintain its grip. The subcontinent simply absorbed the damage and outlasted them. To understand why foreign powers repeatedly fail here, you have to look at the math. Invading India is difficult. Occupying it is practically impossible. This map shows the scale of the problem. You are looking at a landmass of 2.9 million square kilometers, home to 1.4 billion people. The logistics required to subjugate a population that dense across a territory that large would bankrupt any modern military. Then you factor in the natural defenses. To the north, the subcontinent is sealed off by the Himalayas. That is a 3,200-kilometer wall of ice and rock that severely limits ground invasions and chokes off supply lines from mainland Asia. To the south, you have a 7,500-kilometer coastline. This guarantees open maritime access to the rest of the world. Even if a hostile power somehow blockaded the northern mountain passes, India can endlessly resupply itself by sea. Between the staggering population scale, the impassable mountains, and the endless coast, the geography functions as a natural fortress. Foreign states are forced into a hard reality. You can negotiate with New Delhi, but you can never conquer it. That fortress mentality defined India's strategy entering the Cold War in 1947. The United States and the Soviet Union were actively dividing the globe into 2 armed camps. Both superpowers demanded India's allegiance. India flatly refused them both. Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru recognized that joining a superpower alliance meant trading away hard-won sovereignty. Instead, in 1961, he architected the Non-Aligned Movement, a coalition of developing nations agreeing to stay out of the US-Soviet crossfire, creating a diplomatic shield. This naval tactical map tracks the ultimate test of this autonomy during the 1971 war. The United States attempted to intimidate New Delhi by deploying the heavily armed USS Enterprise carrier group into the Bay of Bengal. India countered this by leveraging its diplomatic ties, calling in Soviet nuclear submarines to intercept the American fleet. Faced with the sudden risk of World War III, the American fleet backed down.
Barely 24 years after gaining independence, India successfully forced a superpower retreat by playing the massive empires completely against each other. Today, China is misreading that same strategic playbook. Following a swift victory in the brief 1962 Sino-Indian War, military planners in Beijing categorized India as a permanently fractured, weak neighbor. That was a severe miscalculation. Behind the scenes, physicist Homi Bhabha was already developing a dual-intent strategy, building a civilian nuclear energy program that could be rapidly converted into a weapons program if the country's existence was threatened. The results became undeniable. India conducted its first successful nuclear test in 1974. Then, in 1998, they executed Operation Shakti, detonating 5 nuclear devices in just 3 days. This diagram outlines the 2003 nuclear doctrine. With a strict no-first-use policy, India avoids preemptive strikes, but it promises massive retaliation to aggressors. To guarantee this, India established a nuclear triad, delivering warheads from land, air, and sea. China's strategic planners are still drafting scenarios for the vulnerable military they fought in 1962. Instead, they are staring down an autonomous, heavily armed nuclear state capable of striking back from absolutely anywhere. When you review the geopolitical intelligence, foreign powers consistently make 3 fatal miscalculations here. The first is underestimating domestic cohesion. Outsiders see a country with 22 official languages and assume it is deeply divided. In reality, external pressure causes those diverse populations to instantly unify against the threat. The second mistake is confusing patience with weakness. Western governments often express frustration when New Delhi refuses to rush into treaties or arms agreements. India simply absorbs the diplomatic pressure and develops its military capabilities strictly on its own timeline. This map highlights the third miscalculation, believing economic leverage can dictate political alignment. Consider energy. India imports roughly 91.6% of its oil, and the vast majority of that passes directly through the Indian Ocean region. Because those sea lanes are a matter of sheer survival, India aggressively protects them. To counter Beijing's string of pearls strategy, an attempt to surround the peninsula with Chinese-aligned ports, the Indian Navy actively engages in intense naval diplomacy and joint combat drills, like the Malabar exercises, with other major maritime powers. Superpowers fail in this region because they try to apply standard copy-paste imperial models to a nation that operates on an entirely different set of strategic rules. The modern Indian state is a historical anomaly. It survived centuries of colonial extraction, 75 years of unbroken democratic elections, never initiated a war of aggression, and navigated the post-Cold War era entirely on its own terms. The United States could not force them into an alliance. The Soviets could not make them a satellite state. China will not subordinate them. Foreign capitals keep trying to force New Delhi to pick a side, missing the reality. India does not choose sides. India is a side. For nearly 1,800 of the last 2,000 years, the Indian subcontinent held the position of the world's largest economy. The British Raj was a brutal but ultimately brief interruption in a very long timeline. The next 50 years will not document India's rise to global dominance. The rest of the world is simply remembering that it always held it. So, has India found its rightful place on the global stage again? Yes or no? Leave one word in the comments below.